It was a chilly autumn evening, the kind where the wind whispers through the trees and the sky turns a soft, bruised purple before giving way to night. The house smelled faintly of apple pie cooling on the counter, and the soft flicker of the fireplace made the living room feel like a cocoon. My grandson Oliver had been visiting for the weekend, and we were in our usual routine, him sprawled on the rug with a puzzle, me sinking into my armchair with a cup of chamomile tea. The kind of ordinary night that feels safe, predictable. I had been thinking about nothing in particular, just enjoying the quiet, when Oliver looked up at me with those large, curious eyes and said, "Grandma, do you ever feel like people don't really see you?" I paused mid-sip, startled by the depth in his voice. He was only 14, but there was an almost adult weight in the way he asked the question. "What do you mean, sweetie?" I asked, setting my cup down. He shuffled closer, his legs crossed in a way that made him look older than his years. "I mean, like, when you're around, people see what you do for them, but not who you are." The honesty in his tone hit me harder than I expected. I looked around the room, at the familiar walls lined with framed family photos and knick-knacks collected over decades. Here in this room, I had spent years pouring myself into creating comfort and warmth. And yet, in that small, quiet moment, I realized how much of myself I had hidden behind routines and responsibilities. Sometimes, I admitted softly, "I feel that way too, Oliver." He smiled, a little unsure, as if he had said something forbidden but necessary. "I just thought maybe you should know that I notice, that I see you." I felt my chest tighten, a mix of surprise, pride, and a deep, unfamiliar emotion that made my throat catch. Here was my grandson, so young, yet capable of piercing the everyday facade I wore so easily, telling me he recognized my heart, not just my actions. We sat there in silence for a while, the fire crackling, the puzzle pieces forgotten. And in that quiet, I realized that ordinary nights could be anything but ordinary. Sometimes the most profound moments come when you least expect them, from the people you least expect to teach you about yourself. I looked at Oliver, really looked, and saw not just a child but a young person beginning to understand the world and the people in it. And for the first time that evening, I felt a kind of connection that went beyond words, a bridge between generations, built from honesty and care. It was just the start of something I didn't fully understand yet, but I knew it would stay with me forever. The ordinary had shifted, and I was awake to it in a way I hadn't been before. After that evening, I couldn't stop thinking about what Oliver had said. It lingered in my mind like the soft glow of the fireplace, warming and unsettling all at once. I kept replaying his words, "I see you." It was such a small phrase, but it carried weight, a quiet acknowledgement that made me feel both vulnerable and cherished. The next morning, the air outside was crisp, carrying the faint scent of fallen leaves and wet earth. Oliver and I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood, just the two of us. I bundled up in my old, familiar coat, the one with the slightly frayed cuffs that always reminded me of winters past. Oliver wore his hoodie, sleeves too long for his arms, hands stuffed in pockets as if he was bracing himself against the world. We walked in comfortable silence at first, crunching leaves under our feet. Then, as we passed the corner where the maple trees arched over the sidewalk like a natural tunnel, he asked something that caught me off guard. "Grandma, do you ever feel lonely, even when people are around?" I stopped mid-step, turning to look at him. His face, framed by the hood, was earnest, almost fragile. I could see the shadows of thought under his eyes, the kind only teenagers who think too much at night have. "Sometimes," I admitted, my voice quieter than I expected, "but being with you, it makes me feel less alone." He smiled softly, and there was a pause, a kind of gentle understanding between us that didn't need words. Then he did something unexpected. He took my hand, squeezing it lightly, not like a child seeking comfort, but like someone offering it in return. My heart skipped a beat. It was such a simple gesture, yet it carried more meaning than anything I could have anticipated that morning. We continued walking, our hands brushing, sharing this unspoken bond. He talked about school, his friends, his small worries, and I listened, genuinely interested, feeling a pride and tenderness I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. And yet, beneath the light-hearted chatter, there was a quiet depth, a shared awareness that we were both discovering something new about each other and ourselves. By the time we returned home, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. I made us hot chocolate, and we sat by the kitchen table, steam curling in the warm light. He leaned back in his chair, watching me as I stirred my own mug, and then he said something that made me pause again. "Grandma, I like that you let me see you like this. Not just as my grandma, but as you." I froze, the words settling in me like a soft echo. It was intimate, yes, but it wasn't the kind of intimacy that startled or embarrassed. It was the kind that builds trust, the kind that makes a person feel truly seen. And in that moment, I realized that he wasn't just my grandson. He was a mirror, reflecting back to me the parts of myself I had hidden away. We didn't need to say more. I reached across the table, resting my hand over his. There was warmth there, an acknowledgement that whatever had shifted between us, it was safe, consensual, and real. In that quiet kitchen, surrounded by the fading light and the scent of cocoa, I felt a sense of connection that was rare and precious. I knew this night would change something fundamental between us, not in ways anyone else would understand, but in a way that mattered deeply to both of us. Sometimes it takes someone unexpected to remind you of the parts of yourself you thought were forgotten. And in Oliver's gentle, perceptive presence, I found a glimpse of that forgotten self, waiting quietly to be seen. That evening, after dinner, I found myself restless. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the old wooden floors. Oliver had retreated to the living room with his sketchpad, and I lingered in the hallway, feeling the echo of our earlier conversation. There was something unspoken between us now, a gentle awareness that neither of us could, or wanted to, ignore. I finally joined him on the couch. The lamplight painted his features in soft golden shadow, highlighting the intensity in his young eyes as he sketched absent-mindedly. He looked up at me, noticing my presence, and smiled, the kind of smile that made my chest tighten with both pride and an inexplicable tenderness. "Do you want to see?" he asked, holding up the sketchpad. I nodded, leaning closer. His drawings were thoughtful, surprisingly detailed, little vignettes of the neighborhood, the trees, and even a few whimsical sketches of the two of us. My eyes softened as I traced the pencil lines with my gaze. "You've captured something real," I said. "It feels like you're seeing the world, and me differently." He shrugged lightly, a nervous edge to his casual posture. "I guess I'm just noticing things," he said quietly, almost as if he wasn't sure if he should speak them aloud. I realized then that this entire weekend had been a revelation for both of us. For him, I was no longer just grandma, the one who baked cookies and told stories, but a person with my own emotions, flaws, and quiet strengths. And for me, he wasn't just my grandson. He was a young mind opening, a spirit capable of depth and insight that surprised me at every turn. The fire crackled, and the room seemed smaller, more intimate, as though the walls themselves had drawn closer to witness this quiet revelation. I reached over, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. He didn't pull away. Instead, he looked at me fully, without hesitation, and in his gaze, I felt a profound recognition. "You make me feel like I'm allowed to think," he said softly. "Not just about school or homework, about everything." I swallowed the lump in my throat. That was exactly how I had felt the night before, and hearing it from him made the connection between us feel almost tangible. I put my hand on his shoulder, firm but gentle. letting him know that his words had reached me, that they mattered. For the next hour we talked, not just about the usual weekend topics, but about feelings, fears, and hopes. There was a delicate honesty in the air, a mutual respect that made every word we exchanged feel heavier with meaning. I realized I hadn't allowed myself to be this vulnerable in years, and yet with Oliver, it felt natural, safe, and even necessary. When the clock ticked past 10, I noticed the quiet tension in the room, the kind that hums just beneath the surface when two people are truly connected. I leaned back, letting out a small, contemplative sigh, and Oliver mirrored me, eyes thoughtful. "You know," I said slowly, "I think this weekend has changed us. Not in ways anyone else would notice, but in ways that matter." He nodded, and for a moment we simply sat together, the fire casting flickering shadows across our faces. There was a closeness between us now that went beyond words, a silent understanding that what we shared, our honesty, our attention, our willingness to see each other, was rare and precious. And in that quiet living room, as the flames danced and the night deepened, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life had a way of surprising you, of teaching you lessons in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes it comes in the form of a child who notices your heart, who sees the layers beneath the surface and honors them without judgment. I knew then that whatever happened next, whatever emotions we explored in the days to come, this weekend had given me something I hadn't realized I needed, a reminder of connection, of discovery, and of the courage to let someone truly see you. The following morning, the house was bathed in soft, golden light. Sunlight spilled through the kitchen windows, casting patterns on the hardwood floor, and the air smelled faintly of coffee and toast. Oliver was already at the table, sketchpad open again, but his movements were slower, more thoughtful, as if he, too, sensed the quiet significance of the weekend coming to an end. I poured myself a cup of tea and joined him, sitting across from him at the table. He looked up and smiled, that same gentle smile that had become so familiar over these past few days. I felt a pang of bittersweet emotion. How quickly these moments slip away, even when they feel so vast and profound. "Grandma," he said, looking up from his sketchpad, "I think I understand a little more about people now. About seeing them, really seeing them." I reached across the table and placed my hand over his, feeling the warmth of his palm. "And I think I understand a little more about myself," I replied. "About letting people in and trusting that they'll notice the real me." We sat there for a while in silence, hands touching, eyes occasionally meeting, as if acknowledging the invisible thread that had woven between us. It was the kind of connection that doesn't need to be named. It simply exists, quietly, profoundly. Later, we stepped outside for one last walk before he had to go back home. The leaves crunched beneath our feet, and the wind carried a chill that made us pull our coats a little tighter. But there was warmth in the conversation, in the laughter we shared over little jokes and stories that felt too small to matter to anyone else but us. At the gate, where I would watch him get into the car, he turned to me and said, "Thank you, Grandma, for letting me see you, for letting me just be me, too." I blinked, a lump forming in my throat. "Thank you, Oliver, for seeing me, for noticing what I sometimes forget about myself." He waved as the car pulled away, and I watched until it disappeared around the corner. Then I stood there for a long moment, taking a deep breath of the crisp autumn air, feeling the quiet echo of our conversations, the laughter, and the unspoken understanding that had grown between us. Back inside, the house felt different, not empty, but changed, as if the walls themselves remembered the weekend we had shared. I sat in my favorite armchair, tea in hand, staring into the soft glow of the fireplace. I realized that ordinary nights could hold extraordinary moments, if only we were willing to notice them. This weekend had been unexpected, tender, and deeply emotional. Oliver had reminded me of something I had long forgotten, the importance of being seen, truly seen, and the courage it takes to see others in the same way. It wasn't just about family. It was about connection, trust, and the quiet beauty of understanding someone on a level that goes beyond words. As I sipped my tea and watched the flames dance, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for Oliver, for the moments we shared, and for the reminder that life's simplest encounters can sometimes teach us the most profound lessons. I had thought it was just an ordinary weekend, but in truth, it had been a revelation, and I knew I would carry its warmth in my heart for a lifetime. Sometimes the people we least expect teach us the most about ourselves, and sometimes the ordinary nights are the ones that change everything.